Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
Welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast, and my name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
Good to have you here with us today. We took a week off last week, or maybe it was a couple weeks, I don't remember, but we are back. And thanks for being with us today. We're a tech company. We provide very quickly streaming video. We provide mobile apps. We provide church management tools and website templates. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Steve, what are we going to talk about today?
We are talking about millennials and multitasking.
That's right. No, we're not. No. Well, close. We're all. So if we had this video, if we had a video running, which someday we probably will again, we're all doing several things here at once, and but now we're focused. But we are going to talk about millennials.
Yes.
Today. And we've got a guest that we had on a couple months ago. We had Zach on. Zach Yentzer is our guest. He's a blogger. He's an author. He's actually in the Tucson, Arizona area. He wrote the book called Creative, which you can find on Amazon and other great places. Zach, it's nice to have you here. How are you today?
It's nice to be here. I'm doing well. And I was talking to Phil and really enjoyed the last time I was on the show. Felt like it was one of the most focused and streamlined presentations of the book, and one of the few interviews that I listened back to, I enjoyed it that much. So thank you.
Well, you know,
thanks
if there's
for being here.
Anything we're not, or anything we are, it's focused and we're streamlined. I don't think I've ever been referred using those terms. But anyhow, well, it's good to have you here. But you know, if you've missed that podcast, some people were saying, "Well, I didn't hear that." You know, you can go to iTunes. And just look for Zach Yentzer as one of the people as our guest.
What did you title that episode?
I don't remember.
Oh,
I think it was How to Reach Millennials.
How to Reach Millennials.
I want to say it's early October.
Yeah, it probably was something like that. So yeah, you can go back and look at it, listen to it, I should say. And but today we have Zach again, and Zach, we thought that it would be good to talk about millennials and technology. So that's what we're going to go for.
Sounds
today.
good.
All right, so. First question that we have is, and because we work with churches all the time around here, there's lots of pressure, I think, for churches to, have at least there's the pressures, and pressure is there. Not everybody jumps to it, but there's this pressure, I think, to have the latest bells and whistles, the latest technology, because those who are really interested in reaching millennials, may feel like, hey, I've got to have this stuff if I'm going to reach people. So the first question is, do churches have to have the latest gear, the latest technology to appeal to millennials?
Well, the answer is no, but there's a caveat to that. Okay. And here's the caveat. When I often get asked the question, what kind of church are millennials looking for? Is it the lights and the audiovisual and the technology? Is it the chapel that doesn't have technology? And the interesting answer is that both types of churches are engaging millennials. Some millennials want to go to church to detach from technology. Some millennials, research is showing, are going to churches with inspiring architecture that physically draws you upward. Mm-hmm. That churches at one point were designed with an architecture to point upwards. It was pointed to God in the front and God up top. Right. And I think the comforting answer for churches is that it's not an either or. That churches that are either investing in technology or taking an intentional approach away from it are engaging those between 20 and 37 well. And so that should be an encouragement. Whatever your church is called to do that well, because it's not an either or.
So it's, a traditional church, do they have an opportunity to you're saying they do have an opportunity to reach, and they are reaching people? Just
100%.
Yeah, okay. So it's not only the style of the architecture of the building, but it could be the style of the worship service and that sort of thing.
Right.
So, again, maybe we should have defined this at the beginning, but millennials are generally, about 20 years of age up to mid-30s?
Yes. The book you mentioned at the beginning, Creative, uses Pew Research Center's breakdown, and in 2018 they would be between 20 and 37. So quite an age range, a lot of life stages within that age breakdown.
So all right, so you're saying no, you don't have to have a bunch of bells and whistles to be able to appeal to millennials.
Right. And that's kind of a popular misunderstanding, I think, in that, if I want to reach the millennials, I'm going to need a band. I need the drums. I need the,
fog machine.
The fog machine and the pastor with tattoos and all of that. But that's not really the case. I mean, that does appeal to some millennials, but other millennials are also drawn to the more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So what separates? I mean, what is it then that, and this may be a no-brainer here, but let's throw it out here. What are millennials looking for, and are they looking for something different than other generations have been looking for, or are we all looking for the same thing?
Mm-hmm. I believe that millennials are looking for community and relationship and mentorship in church first and foremost. And if a high quality presentation is attached to that, great. If it's not, as long as that mentorship and relationship and community are a part of church. Something that I like to say a lot is millennials are looking for the church that the church is good at already. That how we adapt and change and present. It's good to keep evolving and trying new things. There's no criticism to either style or type of church. But at the core is a real desire for theological depth, biblical study, and effective mentorship and relationship. The rest is a benefit or an add-on, a value add.
All right. I grinned. As you were speaking, I was thinking of some feedback that we got from a new member from one of the churches we're related to, and they were a millennial. They were a younger generation, and one of their feedback was, one of these guys seems like he's trying to be something he's really not. And he was more specific with that, and I'll be a little more general.
Just the pastor or something.
Yeah, the pastor, and it was middle-aged pastor trying to come off like, hey, I'm a cool early 20s kind of guy, and I'm wearing their the hip fashion or whatever, and they're like, this person just didn't warm up to it. They're like, it's somebody trying to put on a nature, and they kind of it didn't give them a good feeling. It was, but the pastor, I'm sure, was trying to I gotta do these things so that I can attract these people, but the people recognize authenticity and genuineness and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I hope it's not crass to say this, but I throw up a little bit in my mouth every time I hear authentic. Because it's one of the most cliche words used over the last 10 years in this conversation. Authentic. It's almost inauthentic now to be talking about authenticity. It's gotten so bad. However, it's used because it's important. And I think you hit on it, Steve, that regardless of what the trappings were or the style was, the ability to see through inauthenticity is something that millennials have a skill because they've been commercialed in every area of life. And if the experience is not authentic, not just on Sunday, but Monday through Saturday,
and what you had mentioned,
problems.
They recognize what you're good at. And so what you're, that kind of just rang true with me. You can, church can be whatever it's doing, but if it's good at what it's doing, then that's going to resonate. And it's going to be really hard for someone to try to pretend something they're not. Absolutely. They're not going to be any good at it. So,
but is that comforting to an older leader to know that they don't have to try too hard?
Right.
Just be you. You who you are is what we want. I'm air quoting we, whoever we is. Right. Who you are and what you're supposed to be in ministry and in church and in leadership is what we want. No more, no less. Be you Don't try as hard. You don't have to. We're not looking for you to be wearing skinny jeans if that's not your thing.
Yes.
But what if it is?
Well, then
they'll be very concerned.
Conversation. If it's your thing, you can pull it off. Wear the skinny jeans.
65-year-old man in skinny jeans just doesn't.
I mean, Louis Giglio pulls a lot of stuff off. I'll just leave it there.
I would never wear skinny. I like, the older I get, the more I like loose-fitting clothing, so I'm not into tight stuff. But anyhow, enough about my personal problems. So millennial, and you're obviously a millennial here. And the things you mentioned earlier about community, relationship, I mean, those were things I've always been looking for. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think there's a difference then in the millennials today than, say, the baby boomers, or even what's the next generation coming up? What's that called? The
Generation Z.
Z. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there a difference in their needs just from your observation?
Mm-hmm. I think the differences are over-exaggerated. If there is one thing that I do believe millennials are more interested in than maybe my dad's generation, where he was a boomer, is mentorship. I really believe this is a hinge point if we're looking at generations, whether it was upbringing or current culture. Those between 20 and 37 are seeking out desperately mentorship. Not just discipleship, but mentorship.
What's the difference in your opinion?
Millennials are looking for mentorship that connects faith and work, faith and life. So I believe mentorship is the Monday through Saturday life experience. And if I'm talking and listening to millennials who are starting a business and they want a mentor in the faith who knows how to start a business, not just a coffee date for, how's your marriage going, how's your life. Those are great things. We need checks and balances on the spiritual and personal part. But millennials are really seeking out, how do I do Monday through Saturday connected to my faith? That is what I believe is mentorship and what makes it distinctive a touch from discipleship.
So how do ministries create opportunities or, to have that happen? Because I'm sure there's a recent story on one of the other podcasts I listened to was talking about they had an issue where they needed some fathers to show up. I don't know if you heard about this.
I did, yes.
And that they were expecting hopefully getting a dozen fathers to go mentor some kids that didn't have fathers for some event. Maybe you know the details. But anyway, they turned out and they had like 600 fathers show up for these spots. So these guys apparently did something right. But how do ministries go about creating visibility to the opportunities or creating the opportunities for these people to connect, because I'm sure sitting in the pews or at church, there's mentors and there's mentees. They just don't know about each other.
Yeah. There's one church I'm thinking of who simply put out a call for an invitation. They said, if you want mentored, sign up. If you want to mentor, sign up. And we'll work to curate those relationships and put two and two together. And really it is that simple, I believe, where the church has an incredible opportunity, not just hope that those relationships happen, but to pair people together who need to be together, who might not otherwise come together.
So the church will often go, well, that's our discipleship program. And you're not really talking about, I'm going to walk, somebody through the maturity steps of faith.
Right.
This is more of a, hey, let's get together and, share your knowledge on, you're starting a business, how much of your income do you spend on marketing and that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a Monday through Saturday component.
But a lot of churches, I think, fall into the trap of, we're going to start a new discipleship program.
Right.
So this is something completely different.
I believe it's
going to be, I would assume, a lot lower key, may not require as much of, because the discipleship thing is 100% faith kind of thing.
Right.
And this is more of
vocational.
Yeah, vocational kind of thing.
Yep.
So I guess the church would just need to explain what the program is, and
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. And the book actually helps to set up some structures for this. And
okay.
This is a fun part when I get to work with different churches and staffs and teams, is to say, hey, this looks like a really big, hairy, audacious goal, but here are 4 pretty simple steps or 5 pretty simple steps to launch this in 2 weeks. It's pretty straightforward, because the church is the only human institution in our communities that bring almost every single sector and domain together 52 times a year. Mm-hmm. There are companies and communities that pay millions of dollars a year to try and figure out how to get what the church already has. It's an amazing untapped resource.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you're saying here, got to be intentional about it. I mean, the leadership in the church has to embrace the idea and really be intentional to do it. So, so not just like hope that it happens, but actually.
The other challenge I think churches are going to have is, well, that all sounds great, but I don't have any millennials. My average age is, 65, and so it's a real, I assume, a real challenge.
Well, what would you say to that? I mean, here's what I would say. I would say start doing it anyhow. I mean, even if you don't have any millennials, that's what I would say. Let's start something and see what happens. What's your thoughts on that? If you only have maybe a couple people that are in that age bracket.
Yeah.
Because that's a good thing.
It's a great question.
It's a good question.
It's a great question. There's no silver bullet, but there's actually a movement starting to happen here in Tucson where a kind of partnership group is helping churches figure out how to share congregations. So if you have an dominantly older church connected to a dominantly younger church, the younger church, I can tell you, and whoever's listening, the younger churches here in Tucson that I interact with are looking for older members. They're intentionally asking from the pulpit, we need wiser, more experienced heads in the faith. We need them here. But an older member walks into those younger churches, doesn't see anyone that looks like them. It's the same thing that happens with a younger person going to an older church.
Right.
They don't see anyone like them and leave. And so if there isn't that intentionality to say, look, we may be in a certain geographic area, or we may have a certain tradition that skews older, how can we intentionally say, look, we want 10 couples or 20 younger people to commit to intergenerational work in ministry? And can we share, and we can share. And to make it easy, you can do it intradenominational. It doesn't have to be anything super duper crazy. It can just be saying, hey, we've got younger people, you've got older people. How do we share that for the benefit of our churches and our communities?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So let me back up to the first question that we started off. Do churches have to have all this tech stuff to appeal to millennials? Like I work with a little church, and about 16% of our people are 45 and under. And I kind of think that's not too bad. We'd like it to be more. But, if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm a senior pastor or a key person at my church where I'm at, how can I attract millennials? Now, you mentioned about, being authentic. Well, sorry, I didn't make you burp up that word again. But you mentioned about community and connecting. But, I mean, how can I reach these millennials if I'm a pastor in my late 50s or even early 60s, and I've got an older congregation? In your opinion, what would be a good way to start to try to reach? I mean, should they do Facebook, Google? Should we just invite everybody we think that is 20 years older? I mean,
I think there can be a very one-to-one relational communication between a dominantly older church and connections that those older members have with younger people. I also think that branding age and experience in the church as an asset rather than a liability is something that I'd like to see more of. In other words, not to say, oh, we're an older church, we just have older people, but say, look, we have a cachet of experience and wisdom and resources that a younger generation doesn't have yet. How can we invest into a younger generation coming up? We're here, we've got it. Let us launch you into your calling and your vocation and your life in the gospel. And that's a fun thing. That's one of the things I absolutely love the most about getting to talk to older churches, to say, look, we want you. You don't know that we want you, but we want you. We need to be with you. We just haven't been vocal enough about it. you're not out to pasture. Your 60s, 50s, 70s are a prime time. Your best years in ministry are right around the corner. You just need to know that's true.
Are you familiar with SCORE?
Vaguely.
So I don't know if it's a national thing. Do you know if it's national? Or
I don't know.
just,
I think it is, isn't it?
I think it is national. So it's the Society of Corporate something Retired Executives. So SCORE. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's
good.
It's retired executives, and it's a nonprofit that's here in town. I think it's in most towns, and they offer I think of this place when you're talking. They have retired executives, guys that ran businesses and stuff, and you go to SCORE if you're starting a new business or something, and you get paired up with a SCORE retired executive, and they coach you through. Right. So it sounds like a very kind of a similar thing. This is only is a secular thing geared towards business, but it sounds like this model may ring true in the church because you think about, I got a bunch of old retired executives. What use are they? And these guys have said, is that cachet of some super experiences that can really share with people just coming up.
That's what I'm saying. It's built into the church.
Yeah,
your church, my church, every church has it today. Now, it's a given. It's pretty amazing.
I'm just contemplating what you said earlier about with your branding, really make it intentional. That, hey, we're here to help you, and I think that's really a good idea. I'm not sure how to actually build that ad, but I think that's actually a really good idea. We've got something here. Our age is an asset.
Yeah, because a lot of people are ashamed of it. Oh, everybody's old, and we're going to die off and be gone, and you think you got to spin it around and say, hey, we got something that nobody else has.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So we've got a few more minutes here. I definitely want to mention your book, Creative, again. Creative is the book. It's available Amazon?
On Amazon exclusively.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, tell us very quickly again, the book is just a synopsis of it is connecting.
The subtitle is Designing Churches That Engage Generations Together. So a lot of things that we've talked about here require kind of some design thinking, require an intentional process for launching some of these ideas, and the book is a quick start guide to getting that going, and it's a quick, fast, and encouraging read. Had an older pastor tell me yesterday that after there's so much negativity about the church, that this was a very encouraging read that celebrates what the church has, rather than just highlight what it doesn't. So.
And there's, as you just mentioned, there's kind of a little of a linear process there of actually accomplishing this with intention.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got some steps on that thing to do that.
Yep.
How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. The best way will be by email or the online community that I've begun curating called 100 Creative Cities.
Okay.
And the goal is it's a place for visionaries, pastors, leaders, thinkers who are passionate about the intergenerational church and want a space to hash these things out and be encouraged and inspired.
Now, 100 Creative Cities, that's the domain?
It is.
So it's 100creativecities.com. And 100 is the number 100.
And the number 100. Okay. And that's the best place to find me there.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. All right. So that would be good there. You're also hosting a radio show, too.
I am.
Yeah. How's that going?
I am. Oh, I'm enjoying it. Yeah. I'm enjoying it. Turns out the same principles that work in the church also work at a city level. And so the radio show is an exploration of that.
That's dear to my heart. I like radio, as you know.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else to close out with?
I would say on a technology note, every time technology has changed, we've had these moments of, is it good or is it not? We were joking at a newspaper clipping from the late 1890s before we got on the show of the fear around the telegraph and how men who never met each other could now communicate and what that would do. And every time the every time technology evolves and changes, we have this sky is crashing in moment, and somehow as humans we push through it. One of my favorite social media optimists pushes back against the description of technology as disconnecting us. He says, go to any restaurant and sit and watch, and you'll probably find the older couple who sit across from each other for 40 minutes and never share a word. Our instinct as humans is to want to connect, but to also want to disconnect. And regardless of whether that's over Twitter or the Telegraph or the Internet of Things, that's a human thing, not a technology thing. And so I think intergenerational connection on this topic of technology and social media is healthy, because there's great things about it, and then there are bad things about it that can be mitigated, but we have to hash those things out in community as an intergenerational community. I think the church could be a great platform. So those would be my parting words, is let's have the best without the bad. We can get there intergenerationally. And our churches can be authentic when it comes to technology. Do what you're called to do, because the church of all different varieties is being used to engage the next generation. There's no one recipe.
Yeah, good words. Good parting words. Okay, Zach Yentzer has been our guest. And we are out of time. If you want to give us some feedback here, we'd love to hear from you. Just that email's good. Just send us an email. support@streamingchurch.tv. Love to hear from you. Get your thoughts on some of these things that Zach has talked about. I think it's good information, good information to dialogue about and have a conversation with. And if we can help you with any tech needs or even things that are non-tech, we're here for you. And again, that email, support@streamingchurch.tv. And, of course, as we mentioned earlier, we provide streaming video, mobile apps, church management systems, content. We don't have the Telegraph going yet, but we need to bring that back. Start using that, right? All right. I'm being facetious. All right. He is Steve Lacy across the table. Zach Yentzer is on the other side here. I'm Phil Thompson. We hope that you have a great day. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us on the Church Solutions Podcast. We'll catch you again next time. Take care.